Blessed to be a part of your day. Out to our great friend, the fighter for freedom, Dennis Michael Lynch. Dennis, great to have you back. Great to be on the DML. Good morning.
Kev, thanks for having me on, man. I don't really do the media stuff anymore, and there's a few guys who I like to be on with, and you're definitely towards the top of the list.
Well, we appreciate that, sir. Let's talk a little bit about the big issues of the day. Obviously, we don't want to let DACA go under the radar and find out what Congress is doing behind the scenes. Are you surprised at the reaction of the school shooting in Florida, sir?
Am I surprised about the reaction? Unfortunately, the reaction will end up, it's always the same, right, Kev? Everybody's upset. Everybody's heartbroken. Everybody calls for either, gun control or the protection of the Second Amendment, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. And as far as I'm concerned, we just never really address the underlying problem, which is that, I think the mental health situation in this country and the way we fail to handle it is really what can be. You could stem back to that being the problem. We just keep on kicking the can down the road. But that's where America is at this point, Kevin. We chase after problems instead of trying to prevent them. And, we all say our prayers and we're all upset. But 3 days from now, we'll go back to normal.
Indeed. The emotional response that we're getting from the left is, I don't know, it's indescribable, where you have Jimmy Kimmel and others, Dennis, urging the president to do something, going after Paul Ryan, and then people saying it's too soon to talk about this, making it political. As an objective person, as someone who calls it both ways, how do you see the call for more laws?
Kev, this is, you want to talk to me about DACA, you want to talk to me about abortion, you want to talk to me about any level of politics. I will forever be beaten up on the left and pushing for the conservative agenda. When it comes to this one particular thing, I don't think it's really a left versus a right, seriously. I think that no matter you are on the left or the right, your heart is breaking. And when you see our children suffering like this, and whether it's the person who's lost their life or the person who has carried this out because they're just so mentally imbalanced, our hearts break, and when our hearts break, we lash out with whichever way we possibly can. I understand how the entire country right now is in mourning, and the bottom line is that sensible minds have to be pulled out of that, and I expect President Trump and his administration to be those sensible minds and say, look, enough, it stops with us. What do we have to do right now to provide these kids in school more help? What do we have to do to make sure we have more people scouring through YouTube and Instagram and picking up things when guys are actually posting pictures of themselves and saying they want to be professional school shooters? We need to get in front of this. We got to stop being lazy and worrying about, put it this way. I was one of the biggest champions for stopping the NFL from kneeling, and look at how many months that went where we were fighting so hard and championing so hard, having so much debate about whether or not athletes should take a knee for the national anthem. We need to have that same passion put into preventing these sort of things happening at our schools. And when we don't let it just go, then we're going to solve the problem. And it starts with helping these kids being able to cope. Kev, we are such a connected society right now in terms of everything is connected digitally, but that has resulted in a complete disconnect because nobody talks anymore. Everything is about a text and a Snapchat and a this and a that. And these kids, they hunker down. They're in their own rooms. They're watching everybody else appear to have fun. And then this stuff just festers. They write a couple of things, call out for help, but everybody's too busy going through the timelines to look for the stuff that's more fun. And this is why we have this sort of thing. And we're a very intelligent country. We can put people on the moon. We could do almost anything we want. We could actually shoot down missiles off the launch pad if we want to with drones. But we can't identify a kid who looks like he's going to go and shoot and kill 17 people. It's ridiculous. We just keep on kicking it. We have nobody to blame but ourselves, as a society. And that's why I urge President Trump to just get together with his administration and start coming up with really sensible programs that the Democrats cannot ignore when it comes to mental health.
Dennis Michael Lynch, DennisMichaelLynch.com, joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning on KIDO Talk Radio. That's a brilliant point that, we can text, we can Facebook, we can Snapchat, but we can't talk anymore.
We don't. I even see it in my own kids. I got 4 kids, Kev, and 3 of them, one of them is too small to have a cell phone, but the other 3, they've got cell phones. I never, ever see the phone to their ear. It's forever in their fingers. And so, I challenge you. I mean, this is a little bit different, but I challenge you to go up to any 15 or 16-year-old and ask them to write you a sentence in script. They can't do it.
Wow.
They can't do it. And the thing is because everything is this text messaging and disconnected. They don't know how to look somebody in the eye and have a conversation with them. They don't know how to express their feelings face to face when they're sitting down with somebody within the school and a counselor. They'd rather text it. And so this is how disconnected we are from our own kids and on a school level. And this is why these sort of things take place. I said this yesterday on my program. I do a Facebook Live every day at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I said, think about this if you have children. How many times have you said to your kid, have a great day at school, and then when they come home, you say, so how was school today? It's like it's embedded in our everyday vocabulary. And think if you're a parent today where you can no longer say those 2 simple questions. And it's so preventable. And I go back to the NFL example. The reason why the NFL example stayed on the top of everybody's lips for 5 months is because every Sunday it happened again. And in this case, like I said, the news cycle is going to come with something else that's going to wipe away. We're going to forget about it like we forgot about Vegas, like we forgot about Newtown. And nobody's going to do anything, Kev. And then you and I are going to be on the phone, another month from now, 2 months from now, talking about the next school shooting that took place.
Our great friend Dennis Michael Lynch joining us at KIDO Talk Radio. So, Dennis, I was thinking of you last week. I've been watching this Showtime thing called The Trade. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's about the drug trade and the borders and what's going on in Mexico. And I know that you've had several journeys down there. You've been on the border. The DVDs, they come to America. I guess we could start with that, and then we'll go into the DACA deal.
I was a huge champion for President Trump. Well before he was President Trump, when he first walked down the escalator and said they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some are good people, instantly I was, okay, I'm going to vote for this guy. And it was disheartening for me to see the Border Patrol and Department of Homeland Security no more than 2 weeks ago sit with President Trump in a live meeting where cameras were rolling and explain to him that for the first 3 months of his administration, the numbers hit an all-time low, 45-year low in terms of the amount of drugs that were coming through, in terms of the amount of people that were coming through, the illegal activity down there. It was starting to become good again because the tough rhetoric that he put forward as a candidate and in the first couple of months when he was there as president. But what wound up happening in April of last year is that those numbers started to go on the uptick. And they went on the uptick because the president stopped talking about border security, stopped talking tough about immigration, and he started talking about Obamacare, rightfully so at the time. And it's slowly but surely they started testing the system, these illegals and the drug pushers. And then what wound up happening is by September he started to really soften on his immigration stance, and by December he's talking about how he loves the dreamers and he's all for a pathway to citizenship. And then the Border Patrol is telling him, listen, our numbers are back now to Obama levels. It has changed. They're now coming. They realize the fact that nothing is being done down at the border and that the tough talk is gone. So when I see the amount of drugs that are coming in through the border right now, the amount of overdoses that we have in the country, it's an epidemic. It's higher than it's ever been. I go back, and I've been tough on President Trump. I'm going to hold him accountable because it's the tough talk and it's the commitment to what he had talked about during the campaign. That's why he got elected, and he needs to get back to that, because the fact of the matter is we are losing the war on drugs significantly. And what I don't understand about this presidency, and quite honest, every president before him, they all promise that the war on drugs is going to be one that we're going to fight and we're going to win, and yet nobody ever takes the first step of what you have to do to stop it. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean cut off the money. If you look at the way that Trump is handling North Korea, he's putting sanctions on. He's cutting off the money. If you look at the way that he's now talking to the Palestinians, he says, hey, if you're going to continue to throw out violence and you're not going to negotiate for peace with the Israelis, we're going to cut off the money. He understands that if you cut off the money, that's how you will solve the problems. But he's not doing that for the two biggest issues that we're facing at the border. He's not cutting off the money. He's not going after the cartels and cutting off their flow of cash. He's not doing it. We're chasing dime pushers through the streets of Chicago and throughout America, and we're chasing them through the desert, getting these nickel-dime guys. And then on top of that, we're not cutting off the jobs magnet for the illegal workers who continue to flood our borders at unbelievable numbers. We're not, and nowhere in his four-pillar plan for immigration did he have anything about cutting off the flow of incentives to come and stay here illegally. And I'm baffled by it, to be quite honest with you. I'm baffled that this president would have the audacity to dangle citizenship in front of DACA recipients as if it's something that comes out of a Cracker Jacks box. I was blown away by it. And that's why I've had, the millions of people who follow me on social media. We have been calling the White House day in and day out, Kevin. I've had people, we started a campaign taking our Make America Great Again hats, writing no DACA on top of them, and throwing them in a bag and mailing them to the White House. And you know what? So far it's worked. I mean, I'm not going to take all the credit. I mean, this was a national sort of thing where a lot of groups were pushing back. But you saw what happened yesterday. Or every single last immigration proposal, because one sucked more than the next, they all got turned down. Americans don't. It is a false story to say that Americans want DACA, that the Americans want legalization. First of all, that would create the most unbelievable voter pool of Democrats that this country has ever seen. So keep this in mind if you have listeners, Kev, who are in favor of this DACA. Oh, let's give them a pathway because in exchange we'll get a wall. Understand a few things, and if I go too long, cut me off. First of all, number one, when you say, yeah, I'm for DACA, well, to me that means that you're for gun control, climate change, and everything else that Democrats stand for. And the reason why I say that is because when you create that sort of voter pool that will emerge in 10 years from now, you're talking about giving power back to the Democrats in unbelievable numbers. And so in exchange for that border wall that will never get built, by the way, you'll wind up now having administrations and Congresses that will want to take away your gun and put all those other different things that I just mentioned back into place. People aren't thinking that out. There's an important thing about this DACA issue that nobody on Fox News ever brings up, not a single soul. And I'm just as disappointed in Fox News as I am in President Trump when it comes to this. It is proposed in terms of numbers and estimates that 1.8 million DACA recipients would receive this pathway to citizenship. When Ronald Reagan gave amnesty in 1986, he was told it was going to be 1 million. Well, it almost came out to 4 million. So understand one of the things about this DACA proposal and all of them that come together with it, including the president's. It is based on an estimate of 1.8 million. If that number is wrong, and we're back to and history repeats itself like it did in the Reagan days, we're looking at more like 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million DACA recipients. Plus, they all get to get their nuclear family together. So if the number of 1.8 million comes more to where I think it's going to be like 4, 5, or 6 million, you're talking about 6 million more people having voting privileges, and history shows that they always vote by and large in huge numbers for Democrats. When Reagan won the second election in a landslide, he then gave amnesty. George Bush Sr. did not get a pop in the Latino vote. He did not get a pop in the immigrant vote. It actually went down. So the data is there that this would be an absolute voting nightmare and we would never have another conservative president for the rest of our lives. In addition to that, and I'll end on this with this part, this is a national security nightmare because I have interviewed ICE agents, people who really understand this, and they say, listen, there is no way we could conduct background checks on 1.8 million people, let alone 4 or 5 million people. We can't do it. So what happens is there will be a rubber stamping of these folks because to do a background investigation like we should, like knocking on doors, it takes too long. We'll never be able to do it. Plus, there's pressure that for every single one of these applications we deny, there has to now be a court case. So we are pushed to give rubber stamps. So we're going to be giving documentation to people who can be MS-13, who can wind up being attached to terrorism, who may have had rapes or something else in their past that we just never knew about and our system didn't pick up on it. So these sort of things here, we're putting American lives at risk. And I haven't even talked to you yet about the job market, what this would do. You're going to flood the market with more cheap legal labor. All the advances we've made in the last year under the Trump administration would all be lost.
Our great friend Dennis Michael Lynch joining us here at KIDO Talk Radio. Dennis, we're just about out of time. Your final thoughts, sir?
Look, Kev, my final thoughts here in terms of the gun stuff, I've already expressed this to you. Everybody's breaking, but we've got to actually be brave this time and step up and just call for what it is. Guns don't pick themselves up and kill people. People kill people. And so we have to go after the people, if you will, and in this case it's mental health. As far as this immigration stuff goes, I really would like to see the president get back on the Make America Great Again track. Let's start focusing on Obamacare and fixing that for people instead of worrying about how it is that we're going to take care of illegal immigrants. If he does that, I think he'll get the support he needs. But if the Republicans want to give away 2018, the greatest plan to get there is to keep going with this amnesty BS.
We'd love to have you back, Dennis. I know you're busy, but we'd love to have you back, sir.
Anytime you want me, you reach out.
Thank you, Dennis. Take care.
Thanks, Kevin.
Dennis Michael Lynch joining us, DennisMichaelLynch.com. Pro-Life and Mark will get to you next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Hey, Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Pro-Life, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, Dennis was talking about mental health, and when you think about mental health, you should really talk about spiritual health. In the New Testament talks about how there were evil spirits. Jesus cast out evil spirits, and his followers could cast out evil spirits. And, if you talk about this now, they say, me talking about this now, somebody's going to call in or think, that pro-life's mentally ill. But there are really evil spirits, and they influence people. And undoubtedly, the boy in Florida, he was influenced that way. I heard on the radio 39 times the police had been to his place just in the last year or so. And so it's really a local problem. It's a spiritual problem. And the locals didn't do anything about it. So the woman that's crying over that President Trump should do something about that, she's being deceived. She should just really say we should have done something about this boy, because he was spiritually ill. He was listening to evil spirits. So that's my message, that we really need to read the New Testament. We need to take Jesus seriously, or we'll just continue on down this path. And, when you go to the psychologist, the psychiatrist, they're not going to really ask you, do you get tempted in your mind and your heart to do something that you know is not right, to violate your conscience? They don't talk like that, and that's the way it should be. So anyway, God bless you, Kevin. I like your show.
Thank you for waiting. Sorry it took so long to get to you, Pro-Life.
That's fine. Catch you later.
Hey, Pro-Life?
Yeah.
What station are you listening to?
I'm listening to 580 KIDO 107.5, the best station in the Mountain West.
God bless you, my friend. Take care.
All right, we'll see you.
Mark, hang on quickly. And let's go to Mark in Boise. Mark, sorry it took so long to get you. Good morning.
No problem. I appreciate you taking my call. Kevin, I take exception to this notion that it's the left that is politicizing these tragedies. The day that Indianapolis Colts football player was tragically killed in a car accident, and it happened to be with an illegal immigrant was involved. President Trump himself was tweeting about that. So he was politicizing that the day that football player was killed. And they named a law after the tragedy that happened in San Francisco when the woman was tragically killed by a gunfire that was shot by an illegal immigrant. So that was politicized. So it's not just the left; it's politicians that politicize thing. And one other point about mental health. Mental health, of course, is important. But do you think the U.S. is the only country that has mental health issues?
No, I don't.
Well, I mean, but we're the country that's got the most gun violence, the most gun deaths per capita, even after accounting for our population. So it's not just mental health; it's the guns.
Well, what would you like to see happen?
Well, as the Constitution allows, as the Supreme Court and Antonin Scalia himself has ruled, it is fully constitutional to have reasonable gun control. You can't have a tank. You can't have a grenade launcher. Perhaps we don't need AR-15s.
Well, that's a topic that a lot of us are discussing here this morning.
Great. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. You have a great day. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'll talk about what Mark brought up next. You have a constitutional right to own an AR-15. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Peyton, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Peyton.
Good morning, Kevin. I just wanted to say a few things really quick. The reason I founded the Young Conservatives of Idaho, and I would never take your time to talk about myself, there's only one thing I want to say was, the reason I created that was to remove the wedge between the young generations and the old generation. It's always been there for the longest time. For some reason, that's the most important bond we have, is our wisdom of age and the future of youth. And we just never come together on that. And I think that's one of the reasons why things like what happened in Florida happens. We have such a disconnect between that people, they don't know when those are going to happen, because people think that social media is just for young people. It gives you great insight on people filming things with their phones. You get good insight on what's going on. You have to sculpt your social media to be entertaining and what you want for yourself. You don't have to see all the stuff that you don't want to see. You sculpt it. It's an entertainment. News, media, it's a new thing. Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to say was, I think people are forgetting that guns could be one of the only things that are protecting our country right now. If we don't have AR-15s and that stuff, there's going to be a lot more lone wolf ISIS attacks, and people never talk about that. That's one of the only things that's keeping it in check. We're not as safe as the government doesn't make us as safe as people think. Anyone can go to a movie theater and blow that up. It's because they think they can escape because everyone has guns. Anyway, I just want to say that you have a great show. And that's pretty much all I want to say, Kev. Have a good one.
Peyton, God bless. Take care.
Yep.
Let's go to Bob in Meridian with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Bob.
Hi, Kevin. Appreciate your program. And I just wanted to call up and just say that I agree with, I guess it was pro-life, that the answer to our problem here in America, and of course for the whole world, is Jesus. And he talks about how people would think he's crazy, but how many people are plugged in at 2:00 in the morning listening to these people talking about the spacemen that have come down and talked to them and all the crazy stuff today. I grew up in California. I just thank the Lord that 6 years ago that my wife and I were able to move here and get out of the craziness. My life's been up and down, but by the time I was 20, after my folks, who were pretty loving family, but we were pretty dysfunctional. They were swingers, and we'd have big parties at our houses. So by the time I was 20, my answer was, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And my grandmother who prayed for me her whole life, finally I was able to make a decision to come to the Lord. And that's where I have found an anchor for the problems in the world, is my faith in Christ, not in a religion. Religion's man-made, but having a relationship with Christ is personal. I really appreciate your show, and I'll let you go.
God bless, and Bob, thank you for your testimony here this morning.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Carl in Middleton with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Carl. Oh, I'm sorry, Ked. Ked?
Oh, hello.
Hi, is this Ked?
This is Ted. Yes,
Ted.
This is me.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry. My bad. Go ahead, please.
So, I have a cousin who's a SWAT team commander in northern Florida. 2 years ago, he was commended by the state for writing the entire response for school shootings. There was no coordinated effort in northern Florida at all. And he was promoted, won a lot of awards. I called him yesterday to find out, what they're doing other than being able to respond. Because they haven't had anything in northern Florida, and he's been there a long time. And he's telling me about the software that him and his deputies have on their phones that monitors every social media account that's out there. And if anybody's putting anything about shooting or, violence or anything, he actually gets an email on his phone, and his detectives go out and investigate every one of those leads. And he says you'd be astounded by the amount of people that they find that are in need of, mental care. So in response to that conversation, I have a wife who's a teacher in Middleton. I have 3 children that go to the schools in Middleton. So I called the Middleton police chief and asked him about this software. He had no idea it was even in existence, but was very eager to call my cousin down in Florida and find out what it is, how they can get it, and how they can get it coordinated into this area. So my statement is to, call your local law enforcement officers and see if they at least have the tools to even monitor what's going on to keep our children safe, because they don't. And I told them if they can't get it because it's too expensive, I'll pay for it. So, people need to get involved with the local law enforcement and help them. And everyone's afraid. My children go to these schools, and I'm telling you, the bullying is alive and well, despite all the anti-bullying campaigns, to the point where, one of my own children was in serious emotional distress where we had to get involved. And the schools are handicapped being able to do anything about it. Back when I went to school, if there was a disagreement in school, the kids went out in the parking lot and duked it out, and it was over. It was done. The kids have no outlet at all. They can't say anything. They can't do anything in fear of getting expelled or labeled for something else, and they have nowhere to turn. So we need to look at what's going on in the schools themselves to help the kids that need help, instead of, they get the label, they get kicked out, and now they're the outsider, and that's what starts to spiral down. And, for all the people saying Jesus is going to save you, Jesus didn't save any of those kids in Florida. That's my comment on that.
Ted, don't be a stranger, and keep us informed of what you're up to.
Will do.
Thank you. All right. Very strong comments here as we move along. Kevin Miller in the morning, taking your calls, as we do on 107.5 FM and 580 AM every morning here in the Treasure Valley. Joined by Jim and Star at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hey, buddy. Hey, your birthday party was a blast, and I'm glad you had a good time.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far.
Oh, you had a good time. It was great, man. You got some great family, and all the people in that room are like family to you. So that was awesome.
I think you had a little bit too much mic time, but I digress.
Not even, man. I should have got about another 10 minutes. I had so much more to say. You know what I was going to say, as a matter of fact? I'm so glad you brought that up. I was going to let your dad know that as he's getting along in life and getting up there, that, Mr. Miller, you can gift your son right around $14,000 a year every year,
and it's a gift, and Mr. Millie won't even have to pay tax on it. Wouldn't that be nice to do for your boy? I was just going to do that, and then you kicked me off the stage.
It's all about the community, brother. Not about me.
I know. Hey, on a serious note,
although hold on, I do appreciate the gesture.
Yes. See, I was trying. I could still do it next time he's down. You know what? It was cool to see your dad having a great time too. You know, your mom's the one that's sort of like the real outgoing extrovert. Your dad's the more quiet guy, and he was having a good time. And the little thing he made of your brain. Oh, do people know about that? Have you said much about that on the air?
Well, if you'd be listening, you know we've maybe you should listen more.
I do. I listen a lot. I'm probably one of your top guys, but I better get to my point. Here's my point, man.
Yes.
We can't, as a society, we cannot keep ignoring the obvious signs that are pointed all the time, Kevin. And this is in so many different areas. Look at entertainment. Okay. We've known for decades that scumbags like Weinstein have been doing what he's doing, but it goes unchecked. Look at churches, organized religion. We've known forever that there's people that get into that business so they can get close to kids. The Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. And when we see weirdness, we don't do a damn thing about it. Everybody is so passive and everybody is such a pansy. And that's where it's like it's got to change there, Kevin. Instead of having drills twice a year at a school, how to evacuate in case of an active shooter, why not every quarter bring the kids in, each one at a time, and ask them, who's the damn weirdo on campus? Who is the weirdest person on campus that you know? Because, Kevin, we all had them, but back in our day, we would talk about it and we would get some attention on them, and people would do things. Now every damn weirdo is a protected class. And until that happens, Kevin, we're just going to keep having this kind of stuff happen over and over. The shootings, the molestations, the rapes, all that stuff is going to just keep going. So I don't know if you agree with me, but that's where I'm at with it.
Jim, we always appreciate you and your entertaining commentary.
Semper Fi, big guy. I will catch up with you soon.
I've heard that a lot lately.
Lunch on me. Just you got to call me back.
Duly noted. Thank you, Jim.
Stay to the budget menu. Don't go over $2.99.
Roger that.
Out.
Oh, out. Rick in Nampa, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Rick.
Yes, good morning, Kevin. Comment on the weirdo. Where do so many weirdos come from? I suggest that we dig back to historically the infiltration of Horace Mann and John Dewey into school systems. But that's not what I originally called in about. I also want to comment about Judd's comment about Jesus didn't stop those from getting shot. Well, Jesus didn't stop Saul of Tarsus from persecuting early Christians, but he did change Saul of Tarsus.
Well, and, as Jim emailed in, Jim from Boise said to me, look, Kevin Miller, the government didn't stop them, save those kids either.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, Jesus told his disciples that we would face persecution. So anyway, but originally my purpose for calling in is it's the guns, it's the guns. That seems to be the mantra of those who want to destroy America. And the term gun-free zone just comes across the criminals' hindrance-free zone.
Well, I would agree. And as we've talked about for quite some time, we started yesterday, the solution is getting people more comfortable with more guns, not taking the guns away. And then you have people, and Mark brought this up, he wants to get rid of the AR-15. And, we've been down this path. Just because you pass a law does not mean that that the criminals are going to obey the law, Rick. They're not.
Exactly. Well, I like watching, Dylan and I watch old Westerns that didn't have the filth in them, but they had the action. And the thing is, the criminals used guns, but many times it was the armed citizens that stopped the criminals. Basic principle.
Well, I would agree with you on that. And in my own personal preference, Am I comfortable with people, having guns to protect us? Yes. I don't view people in our society as inherently evil. I do believe that the criminals will not obey the laws, and we're just disarming the public. And the idea that we should take away the AR-15 and Jimmy Kimmel and all these things. Well, again, this is mob rule. This is acting on emotionalism. And as we've said this morning, Rick, here at KIDO Talk Radio, look, there were school shootings, unfortunately, during the Clinton administration. That's when you had that repressive assault weapons ban. If the American public wanted assault weapons or their weapons limited to BB guns, that would have passed a long time ago. It's against the will of the people.
Yeah. Tyrants who want to control everything have always pushed for gun control. So historically, that's easy to verify.
Rick, thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio and for participating today.
Hey, you're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. More of your phone calls next. It gets heated at the White House. You'll hear from Sarah Sanders, plus more of your phone calls at KIDO Talk Radio.
There was a high school in Kentucky Monday, a school cafeteria outside Dallas, a charter school parking lot in New Orleans as well. There have been 11 shootings at schools in the first 23 days of this year. In October, after the Vegas shooting, you said it was an unspeakable tragedy from that podium, said it was a day for consoling survivors and mourning those who we lost. But you said there's a time and place for political debate. What has the president done in the time since October to try to prevent any of these shootings from taking place?
Look, I think first and foremost to recognize that any loss of life is incredibly sad, and any shooting at any school across this country is something that should never happen. Students fearing for their lives while they're attempting to get an education is unacceptable. Certainly in this administration and by this administration. The president believes that all Americans deserve to be safe in their schools and in their communities. We've had 2 years of increased violence prior to the president taking office. We've tried to crack down on crime throughout the country. The president instructed his administration to make the recent crime wave a top priority. Some of the things that they've accomplished in that process and been focused on is they've charged more defendants with violent crime offenses than in any year in decades. They've charged the most federal firearm prosecutions in a decade, and they've convicted 1,200 gang members and took down numerous drug trafficking organizations, all in an attempt to help create safer and better communities and certainly safer schools. Thanks so much,
Wait, Sarah, to be clear, you said we all agree that we want students to be safe at schools. That's not in dispute. And we all agree we don't want there to be crime. But what is the president specifically doing? You guys said at the time today was not the day, but we should have these policies.
I just read off a lot of the things that he's doing.
We should have a policy conversation. So the question is, what is the policy the president's willing to pursue or actively direct others to pursue to help make sure that these students are safe?
Look, I know the Department of Justice instructed ATF to do a thorough review on a number of firearm provisions. That is ongoing, and it will be submitted to the Office of Management and Budget. We're going through that process. That policy review and that policy discussion is taking place. At the same time, the president has instructed the Department of Justice to crack down and make the crime wave that took place long before the president ever came into office a major priority. And you're seeing that happen. You're seeing a Department of Justice that is being active, empowering its law enforcement to crack down on crime. And that's what those results that I just read out to you show, is that they're putting a focus on that.
Shootings seem to be their own category. We agree we don't want crime.
I think they're part of a crime wave, absolutely. I don't think you can completely separate the two. They are.
And from the White House yesterday, good morning, Kevin Miller here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. People blaming President Trump. Jimmy Kimmel blaming President Trump. People calling on the House of Representatives to put a bill forward to pass laws. But are laws going to protect people? The government has not protected us and won't. Our friend Ted calling in, very frustrated. This is the time, as Ted said, to do something about it, and that's, getting software, getting coordination. We live in the best place ever when it comes to raising a family, when it comes to family values. But again, that doesn't mean that the wolf won't strike, and let's hope and pray that that doesn't happen. But if we need more than prayers to make sure the police have a coordinated effort, to make sure that if you have someone saying, I'm going to be a professional school shooter, that they're, watched, they're, interviewed. As we talked about yesterday, making schools a hard target. More on that in a minute. Traffic and weather together.
Step up, be a man, and talk about it, and stop thinking about the NRA and your next campaign donation. Just stop. Everyone knows what you're doing, and it's time. That does it for us this morning. Stephanie Rule picks up the coverage right now.
Thanks so much, Mika. Thanks, Joe. And to Marco Rubio, you don't have to step up and be a man. Step up and be a human.
Words of consolation, talk about mental health, are simply not enough. They must be followed by real action. The president has to lead or get out of the way.
There we have it. Much more on that coming up. Kevin Miller in the morning here. But again, we're talking about Florida. We don't want to scare anybody, but we have a lot of people, a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents that trust school systems each and every day. I believe the question should be asked, what are we doing? What are we doing to keep our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, teachers, students, principals, parents safe? If that's what good can come out of this tragedy, so be it. Let's focus on what we can do locally and the idea of making schools a hard target. Now, some will say, well, Kevin, you're just escalating the situation. No, again, making the schools a hard target. You know, we've heard about these people going after folks in schools, in churches, in other places. You don't see the criminals. You don't see the cowardly, murdering, scum-sucking thugs doing this at a place where they have armed guards or at a place where, well, there's a possibility somebody could be firing back. You know, everybody's a tough guy until they face a challenge. And perhaps that's what we need to be looking at as opposed to disarming America, getting rid of the AR-15, getting rid of the bump stock. Do you believe that will keep us safe? I'd love to hear from you next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.